How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Gimel, Daf 63. Although the truth is, we really have to do basically Daf Samach Beis and Beis of Masechta BavaMetzia. We're going weiter in Ezu Neshech. Wow, Chevy, this is going to be a very difficult Daf. I just hope that my brain doesn't immediately turn to mush. Because I kind of need my brain for this one. What is today's daf even? Wow. Okay, so today's daf talks about kind of the last part of our Mishnah, the psika ala peiros, a forward contract on fruits. So, that part of the Mishnah itself was just kind of circuitous, maybe you could say. Now we're going to see a few different ways of trying to figure out exactly how it makes, how to explain it and explain what's going on there. And we are going to learn a lot of things. For example, like Shara Yotze, right? The kind of market rate of fruits at that time and how that whole thing works. Ribis just, I guess, has a lot of different kind of categories of them. A lot of Ruvain, Shimon, that kind of stuff. Okay, here we go. I imagine it's going to be a long daf. I'm going to go slowly. Hopefully my brain will not be mush. Or at least not till the end. All right, here we go without further ado. All right, we're going to start on Daf Samach Beis Amud Beis. At the two dots, about 10 lines into the Amud Samach Beis Amud Beis, says the Gemara v'chi ein lo yain mahave. Wait, where am I? Keitzad lo kachemenu chitim bedino zov hakor v'chein ashar v'chulei. All right. So the end of our Mishnah had talked about a scenario. Ruvain gave Shimon 25 silver dinars. Okay, and he says, Shimon, I want wheat, and Shimon says, all right, I will provide you with wheat in 6 months from now. Okay, now, he doesn't say 6 months from now, but the point is some future date. Now, the going rate for wheat at the time was 25 silver dinars for a sa'ah of wheat. Okay, I don't know if it said exactly that in the Mishnah, but the point is, what does it say? Okay, does Rashi say dafka? I don't know if it's dafka a sa'ah. What does it say? Oh, a core. Okay, a core of wheat. A core of wheat is 25 silver dinars at the time. Now that's important because since essentially he was paying the market rate, so that makes it okay. Okay, since there was a market rate at the time, we're going to learn about it today, but since there was a market rate at the time, that makes this deal okay. Okay, so Reuven gives, so even though the price of the wheat can, and as we will see in our example in the Mishnah, will go up, it is okay since at the time that Reuven gave the 25 silver dinars to Shimon for the core of wheat, that was the market rate. That's okay. Now, the value of a core of wheat increases to 30 dinars. All right. And now it's, let's say 6 months later, and Reuven says to Shimon, hey, Shimon, okay, I want to collect my wheat right now. And of course, that wheat is now worth 30 dinars, not 25 dinars. So now Shimon says, hey, look, instead of me giving you, So Reuven says to Shimon, I want the 25 dinars, I want the wheat right now, which are worth 30 dinars. I want the wheat because I want to sell them to buy wine. And I'll sell them, I'll get 30 dinars and I'll buy wine. And Shimon says, you know what? I'll supply you with the wine. 30 dinars worth of wine. So the Mishnah had said, if he has wine, Bisir. If he doesn't have wine, then it's a problem. That was our Mishnah. Now, we're going to see different ways to explain the Mishnah. We'll see the example of Abaye actually explains the Mishnah very differently. But that's essentially how we've been understanding up until now that section of our Mishnah. So, again, says the Gemara at the 2 dots, Ketzad lokach imenu chitim b'dino zav akar, that if Reuven gave Shimon 1 golden dinar, which is 25 silver dinars, for 1 core of wheat, v'chein ashar, and that was the market rate at the time, which is completely acceptable, that's fine. V'chulei, v'chi ein lo yayin mai have. Now, the Gemara asks, who cares that Shimon doesn't have wine, right? We said, after all, right, meaning when Reuven gave Shimon 25 silver dinars for the wheat, we said that's no problem because the market rate was 25 silver dinars for 1 core of wheat. And therefore, even though the wheat then increased to 30 core, we said that's no problem because at the time that Reuven gave Shimon the 25 dinars, that was the market rate. So then we say, okay, Reuven now wants to collect his wheat, which is now worth 30 dinars. Shimon says, hey, so Reuven says to Shimon, I want to collect the wheat because I want to, sell it and buy wine. Shimon says, hey, I'll provide you with the wine. So we say that if Shimon has wine, it's okay. But if he doesn't have wine, it's a problem. But who cares? Why don't we say that if the market rate for wine is now 30 dinars for, let's say, a barrel of wine, so then even if he doesn't have the wine now, that should be fine since there's a market rate. Okay, so says the Gemara, v'chi ein lo mai have. Who cares that Shimon doesn't have wine right now? Well, almost 8 minutes into the daf, and we're still on the first line. V'atanan, we learn in the Mishnah, ein poskin ala peiris ad sheyetze ashar. We don't have forward contracts for fruits until there is a market. It's an established market rate, right? So, okay, let's go weiter. Yotza ashar, but once there's an established market rate, poskin, then we can, right? So, as we said in our Mishnah, Reuven can give Shimon 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat, provided that it is the market rate. Provided that it is the market rate. And afal pisha ein lozeh, yesh lozeh. And even though Shimon might not currently have wheat, somebody else will have wheat, and that's what makes it okay. So, let's take a step back for a second. So first of all, right, in order for Reuven to be able to give Shimon these 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat, even though Shimon doesn't have it right now, he'll have it in the future. In order for that to be acceptable, there has to be an established market rate. If there's no established market rate, so then it would not be acceptable. But so long as there is an established market rate, we say that Reuven can give Shimon these 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat, even though Shimon doesn't have the wheat right now. And there's a reason for that, as the Gemara just said. The reason for it is because since there's an established market rate, and Reuven, importantly, just gave Shimon 25 silver dinars, Shimon could theoretically, since there's an established market rate of 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat, Shimon can go and find somebody, theoretically, who's selling wheat at that market rate and buy that wheat, and he'll have a core of wheat that he could fill Reuven's order with. Now, if he does that, he wouldn't make any profit because he spent all of the money they got from Reuven on the wheat, so that's why he doesn't do it. Instead, he's got a shipment coming in that I guess he's getting, a better rate for, and that way he can make a profit. Okay, sure, but since theoretically he would be able to spend that money and buy, be able to fill Reuven's order right now. So even though he doesn't have to do that, but he can do that. That's what makes it allowed. Okay. Now, in that explanation, also, lies another important point, which is essentially going to be what the Gemara is going to say now, which is that the whole reason why Sha'ar HaYotze works is because Shimon would be able to fill the order right now by purchasing it from somebody else at the market rate, which, therein kind of lies the answer to our Mishnah, although we're not really going to get there right now. We're going to go on a bit of a circuitous route, though we are going to get there eventually, which is, we're going to start now. There's like different layers to this daf, but basically, the thing is, in this case, what makes this case unique is what happened. Reuven gave Shimon 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat. Shimon didn't have a core of wheat at the time, but the Mishnah did make a point of saying that the market rate was 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat. Shimon now is in possession of Reuven's 25 silver dinars. He could theoretically go and buy a core of wheat with those 25 silver dinars and fill Reuven's order. He doesn't have to, obviously, though. And instead, his shipment is going to come in later, and he's going to fill Reuven's order from that shipment and make a profit. Now, by the time that shipment comes in, though, the price of wheat has increased, so that now a core of wheat is 30 dinars. And we say that that's okay. Since, at the time that Reuven gave the 25 silver dinars, the market rate was 25 silver dinars for a core, and he could have bought it from somebody else, that's fine. Now comes time, so now the, shipment of wheat comes in, a core of wheat, shipment now is a core of wheat for Reuven. Reuven says, okay, I want my core of wheat. Right, Reuven says, I want my core of wheat right now, because I want to sell it and I want to buy wine. Shimon says, oh, you want to buy wine? I have wine. How about this? Let me convert it. I'll give you wine. I'll give you 30 dinars of wine instead of wheat. Now here's the thing. At this point, Reuven's not giving Shimon any money. He gave money at the beginning. Now initially, right, the whole point of Sha'ar HaYotze is that Shimon could theoretically spend that money right now and fill Reuven's order. The thing is, at this point though, when he's, instead of being paid for instead of receiving the wheat, Shimon saying, I'll give you wine, Shimon is not receiving any money right now. He's converting a debt of wheat into a debt of wine. But even if the market rate right now is 30 silver dinars for a barrel of wine, Shimon wouldn't actually be able to fill Reuven's order right now, because Reuven didn't just give him 30 dinars. He just converted debt. And therefore, Sha'ar HaYotze would not work, and that's why we're saying if Shimon has the wine right now that he could fill Reuven's order, matov manoim, beseder. But if he doesn't have it, well then the whole concept of Sha'ar HaYotze wouldn't work anymore, because the whole point was that since Reuven's giving Shimon money, he could go and buy it for the market rate and fill his order now, but Reuven's not giving him money right now. Shimon's converting debt from wheat to wine, but if he doesn't have the wine, so therefore that is going to be a problem. Now, that's essentially what the maskana of the Gemara is going to be. We're going to have to go through a long journey before we get there. And what I just said, the Gemara is not going to say right now, but that's kind of like the ultimate logic, and at least different pieces of that logic are going to be along the way. There are going to be some open questions along the way, but that's kind of like let's say, the ultimate underlying logic, if that can make sense. Okay, so let's start over. 15 minutes into the daf, we're still at the very beginning. V'chi ein lo yayin mai have. So we say, again, I just kind of explained a lot of stuff, but now we're starting from the beginning. So the Gemara starts out by asking, V'chi ein lo yayin mai have. we said at the end of the Mishnah that if Shimon doesn't have the wine, so then it's a problem. But who cares? What about Sha'ar Yotze? Now, I just explained that the whole point of Sha'ar Yotze is that he has money, and in this case he's converting debt. We'll get there. But right now the Gemara wants to just say, who cares that he doesn't have it? What about Sha'ar Yotze? After all, we learn in the Mishnah, in Poskin ala Peris, ad sheyetze ashar, we can't advance money, right? Reuven would not be allowed to give Shimon 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat if there is not yet any established market rate. But Yotza ashar, once there is an established market rate, Poskin, then Reuven would be able to give Shimon 25 silver dinars for a future delivery of a core of wheat. And even though Shimon doesn't currently have a core of wheat, but since the market rate is 25 silver dinars for a core of wheat, somebody else will have it, and he could theoretically fill his order right now. Therefore, it's acceptable. And in practice, when this core of wheat in the future, he could then give it to Reuven, and we're not concerned. But what if the value goes up? Okay, fine. So the question is, why does our Mishnah say that it's a problem if Shimon doesn't have the wine? What about if it's what about if there's an established market rate? Omer Rabba says Rabba, Masnisin bibalachov bidmei maskinon. Well, says Rabba, yeah, but the thing is, our Mishnah, once we get up to the end of the Mishnah, when we're talking about where Shimon says, oh yeah, I owe you 30 dinars of wheat, how about I just convert that to 30 dinars of wine? And we say that he has to have it. So now, okay, fine. So So Rabbi says, look, our Mishnah is talking about where Reuven isn't giving Shimon money for the wine. Shimon is just converting a debt of wheat to a debt of wine. And that's why it's a problem. Uchadetanya, and like we learn in a brisa. Now this brisa is going to be slightly funny, and we're going to essentially ask a kasha on it, or going to there's one piece of this brisa that doesn't really make sense, and ultimately we are going to paskin in a way that does make sense. Anyways, here's the brisa. If Reuven lent 100 dinars to Shimon, Reuven lent 100 dinars to Shimon. V'holach v'omar al gorno, and then Reuven goes to Shimon, and he says to Shimon, v'omer, and he says to Shimon, Tein li ma'osa shani rotze likach bohem chitim. Reuven says to Shimon, look, Shimon, I lent you 100. I want you to pay me back my 100 dinars because I want 100 dinars to be able to buy wheat. Omar lo, and Shimon says, Chitim yeshli shani nosein lecha tseva se olai kishar shel achshav. And Shimon says, look, you want the 100 dinars so that you can go buy wheat? I have wheat. I'll just get your wheat from me. Right? So he says, he says, I have wheat. Shani nosein lecha, I'll give it to you. Tseva ase olai kishar shel achshav. So let's make a cheshbon based on whatever the market rate is right now, and I'll just provide your wheat instead of 100 dinars. And I will fill your wheatly needs for the upcoming year. Osir, that is not allowed. Because since Reuven is not giving Shimon hard cash, because remember, the whole point of Sha'ar Yotze, the whole point of the established market rate, is that, well, Shimon would be able to take the money that Reuven just gave him and fill his order right now for that rate. But the thing is, right now, Reuven's not giving Shimon anything. Shimon is just converting the 100 dinar debt into a debt of wine, or wheat, in this case. So since Shimon is not receiving cash right now, so therefore Shara Yotze is irrelevant, and this whole thing is usher. Now, what's funny about this brisa is that this brisa does not make a distinction between if Shimon has, meaning the brisa is talking about where Shimon claims to have the wheat, and that seems to be irrelevant, which is weird, right? Because the whole point of Shara Yotze is that even if he doesn't have it, he could buy it, but here he actually has it, so this should be okay. And in the end, we're going to say that if he has it, it would be okay. But anyways, Rabbah for now wants to say that. So Rabbah wants to explain our Mishnah that because Shimon is not receiving money, but instead sort of transferring debt for wheat onto wine, that is why it's going to be a problem if he doesn't have the wine. But then Abaye asks, where am I? Okay. Abaye, but says Abaye, idiloki isara baliyado, my area eina filu yesh lo nami. Abaye points out that, however, this brisa that Rabbah just quoted did not distinguish between the brisa that Rabbah just quoted did not distinguish between whether Shimon has the wheat or whether Shimon doesn't have the wheat. Right? The brisa just said that Shimon cannot transfer the debt for the 100 dinars onto a debt for wheat since he's not receiving anything right now. And the brisa does not distinguish whether, or doesn't care whether Shimon actually has it now or not. And therefore Abaye is medayek that if we would go based on sort of the basis of this brisa, well then the challenge for our Mishnah is that our Mishnah says that when Shimon converts the debt of wheat to debt of wine, it would only be a problem if Shimon doesn't have the wine. But if he has the wine, it would be okay. But that brisa doesn't distinguish. And even if he had the wine, it would be a problem. So therefore, on the basis of that brisa, we can't explain our Mishnah because our Mishnah says that if he has the wine, it would be okay. Only if he doesn't have the wine, would it be a problem. So now, Abaye offers a very complicated answer. Hello, Abaye, rather says Abaye, Masnisin kiditani Rav Safra beribis tevei Reb Chia, ditani Rav Safra beribis tevei Reb Chia, yesh dvarim shem mutarin v'asur mipnei ha'aromas ribis. Ketzad amar lo alveni mana, amar le mana ein li chitin b'mana yesh li, shani nosin l'cha, nosin lo chitin b'mana v'chazar, v'lakcha ne'menu, be'esim v'arba sela muter, v'asur lasos kem mipnei ha'aromas ribis ha'chanami, Kigon da Amar Alveni 30 dinarim, Amar le 30 dinarim ainli, chitin b30 dinarim yeshli, shal nosen lecha, nosen lo chitin b30 dinarim v'chazav lekachem emenu b'dinar zav, Yi isle chamer lelove diyoiv le b30 dinar, perehu de kashakil minei, v'leis lam bavilo, kem de leis lechamer vada mishkol zuze minei mechze kiribis. Wow. Okie dokie. So as I said, Abaye gives a very complicated answer. So Abaye quotes, Rav Safra quotes this Ribis Tevei Reb Chia. I don't know, it's interesting because we're about to see, after this, Rav is going to quote Reb Oshaya. Reb Oshaya and Reb Chia and Reb Oshaya, I think, kind of collected the Brises, into the Tosefta, which is interesting because are they like, is this both from the Tosefta, but they disagree? I don't know, whatever. Now, what's this talking about? Okay, I'm going to explain it outside, and then we're going to read it inside. So this Ribis Tevei Reb Chia points out that there's a concept called ha'aromas ribis, which is ribis evasion, trying to scheme to evade ribis. And that scenario would be if Reuven says to Shimon, let me see something quick, 1 second. Okay, yeah, fine. All right, okay. So Reuven says to Shimon, hey Shimon, I need 100 dinars. Okay? I need 100 dinars. He says, hey, I need 100 dinars. 1 second, just want to see some, come on. Yeah. Okay, fine. So Reuven says to Shimon, hey Shimon, I need 100 dinars. I need 100 dinars cash. Shimon says to Reuven, I don't have 100 dinars cash, but you know what I do have? I have 100 dinars of wheat. I'll give you 100 dinars of wheat. How's that? Reuven says, look, I need cash, but Peseder, it's a good start. Fine, I'll take 100 dinars worth of wheat. All right, now 100 dinars is 25 selas, because it's 4 dinars in a selah. So 100 dinars is 25 selah. Okay, so basically, Reuven receives 25 selas worth of wheat. Now he needs 25 selas worth of cash, though. So then he says to Shimon, he says, hey Shimon, do you have 24 selas? You do have 24 selas of cash that you can give me, and basically you'll buy back your wheat from me for 24 selas. And Shimon says, yeah, you know what? I have 25. I didn't have 25 selas to give you, but okay, I can buy back my wheat for 24 selas. Now the thing is, Reuven had borrowed from Shimon 25 selas worth of wheat, which means he's going to have to repay Shimon 25 selas. So the issue here is that it looks like ribis, in that Shimon gave Reuven 24 selas, but Reuven's giving back to Shimon 25 selas. Now, technically speaking, right, this is just, it looks like ribis evasion. Technically speaking, it isn't actually ribis, right? Because what happened? Shimon gave Reuven a value of 25 selas. Reuven needs to return to Shimon a value of 25 selas. Now, Reuven needed cash. Reuven went to Shimon and says, Shimon, I need cash. I need 25 selas of cash. Shimon says, I don't have 25 selas of cash, but I have 25 selas of wheat. Here, do you want that? Reuven says, fine. And he takes it. Now, theoretically, Reuven could have then sold that wheat to Levi for 24 selas. Okay. Now, he would still owe Shimon 25 selas, so he would have to pay back Shimon 25 selas, but in that case, there would be no problems, right? Shimon basically loaned Reuven 25 selas, and Reuven pays back 25 selas. In the meantime, Reuven had sold the wheat to Levi for 24 selas. Beseder. The problem is that, right, so therefore this whole thing is technically okay, just instead of Reuven selling to Levi, he's just selling it to Shimon, but that's just a technicality. That doesn't make it ribis, but all of a sudden, because everything's going, it's like, internal dealing, Shimon's giving him wheat, and then he's selling it back to Shimon, but then giving him, it's like, what's the deal with Reuven and Shimon here? At one point, Shimon is now giving Reuven 24 dinars, and Reuven's giving to Shimon back 25 dinars, and it looks like, smells like ribis. Like what, he didn't have 25 dinars, only had 24 dinars, and now all of a sudden he's giving 24, but getting 25 back. It looks like some kind of interest thing going on over there, and therefore it's not allowed. And Abaye then goes on to explain our Mishnah in the same way, to explain our Mishnah in a completely different way based on this kind of construct. Right? We had learned that our Mishnah was talking about where Reuven had given Shimon 25 silver dinars for wheat. By the time Shimon got the wheat was 30 dinars for a core. Reuven says, hey, I want my wheat back. Shimon says, look, Reuven says, I want the wheat so I could buy wine. Shimon says, hey, I'll fulfill your wine. That's what, right, I'll fill your wine. So that's what our Mishnah is talking about. Abaye explains our Mishnah in a completely different way. Abaye says that Reuven needs 30 dinars. So he says to Shimon, hey Shimon, can I have 30 dinars? Shimon says, I don't have 30 dinars. I have wheat that's valued at 30 dinars. So Shimon then gives Ruvain the wheat that's valued at 30 dinars, but Ruvain needs cash. So Ruvain says, hey Shimon, I don't even remember what I just said. Ruvain needed 30 dinars, right? So he says to Shimon, do you have 30 dinars? He says, no, but I have wheat that's valued at 30 dinars. So he gives Ruvain the wheat. Ruvain then says to Shimon, Shimon, do you have 25 dinars to buy back the wheat so that I can get 25 dinars cash? He said, yeah, sure, I have it. So then Shimon gives 25 dinars to Ruvain. And then we're saying that Ruvain now can't give back the wheat. It can't give back 30 dinars to Shimon because it looks like, right? So meaning im yeshlo means that if Ruvain has, wheat or wine or something to pay back Shimon that way, that would be okay. But if he doesn't have that and all he has is cash, so then basically Shimon paid him 25 and he's paying back Shimon 30, and that's going to be a problem. So Abaye it flips the whole Mishnah on its head and gives an entirely different shot. So now let's read it inside. Elo Amar Abaye. We're about a half an hour into the daf. We're about halfway into the second amud of yesterday's daf. Elo Amar Abaye. Rather says Abaye Masnisin Kiditani Rav Safra, that our Mishnah is based on what Rav Safra taught, the Brisa Rav Safra taught, Beribis debei Reb Chia, of the Ribis of Reb Chia, the Tani Rav Safra Beribis debei Reb Chia, Yesh Devarim Shein Mutarim. There are certain things that are technically mutter, but v'asurin mipnei aromas ribis, but are forbidden because it's like ribis evasion. It looks like you're trying to get around ribis. Ketzad, how so? Omar lo, if Reuven says to Shimon, Alveni mana, can you lend me 100 dinars, which is 25 selas? Omar le mana ein li chitin b'mana yeshli. Shimon says, look, I don't have 100 dinars. I do have wheat valued at 100 dinars. Do you want that? Where am I? Ein li chitin b'mana yeshli shani nosein licha. I can give that to you. And Reuven says, fine, I really need cash, but okay, this is a start. I'll take the wheat that's valued at 100 dinars. Nosen lo chitin b'mana. Okay, so Shimon gives Reuven the wheat for 100 dinars. V'chazor v'lekochan emenu be'esim v'arba sela. Now remember, 100 dinars is 25 selas. Shimon then gives Reuven, buys back the wheat, not for 25 selas, but for 24 selas, and now Reuven has 24 selas, 96 dinars of cash. And then ultimately, Reuven is going to have to pay back Shimon 25 dinars. So he's receiving from Shimon 24 dinars and paying back 25 dinars. So mutter, technically speaking, it's mutter, as we said, because initially Shimon had given him 25 dinars, selas, and Reuven now needs to pay back 25 selas. It's only that in between he had then sold it back to Shimon for 24 selas. Now theoretically he could have sold it to anybody, but he sold it to Shimon for 24 selas. That's what makes us suspicious. So mutter, where am I? So emenu be'esim ve'arba sela mutter. So it's technically mutter. It's technically not ribis, but v'asur lasus g'mipnei aromas ribis. But it's not allowed because it seems like ribis evasion. Hochanami, and then Abaye wants to explain our Mishnah in a similar vein. Kigon de Amar alveni shloshim dinarim. It's talking about where Reuven had said to Shimon, lend me 30 dinars, silver dinars, Amarle. Shimon says to Reuven, shloshim dinarim einli, I don't have 30 silver dinars. Chitin b'shloshim dinarim yeshli, but I do have wheat valued at 30 dinars. Shani nosen l'cha, that I can give to you. Nosen lo chitin b'shloshim dinarim. So then Shimon proceeds to give Reuven wheat, right, 30 dinars worth of wheat. But then, and then Shimon purchased them back from Reuven for 25, for 1 dinar zav, which is 25 silver dinars, right? So we have, silver selas. So we have 100 dinars, silver dinars, which is 25 silver selas, which is 1 gold dinar. Is that right? Wait, what? No, wait, what? No, wait, what? What did I just say? What? No, I just confused the two cases. Forget what I just said. No, 1 dinar zav is 25 silver. Oh, sorry. Where am I? Dag nabbit. Alright, let me back up. Sorry. Gonna back up to Hachanami. Right? Sorry, it all just merged into one case. Anyways, Hachanami, here also in our Mishnah, Kigon to Amr Alveni Shloshim Dinarim. Reuven says to Shimon, hey Shimon, I need 30 silver dinars. Amar le Shloshim Dinarim Ainli. Shimon says, look, I don't have 30 silver dinars, but Chitin b'Shloshim Dinarim Yeshli. I have wheat valued at 30 silver dinars. Shani Nosin L'cha, that I will give to you. Nosin lo Chitin b'Shloshim Dinarim. So then Shimon gives Reuven the wheat at 30 silver dinars. V'chaz l'kochem yemenu b'dinar zav, and then Shimon buys it back from Reuven for 1 golden dinar, which is 25 silver dinars. So basically, he gave Reuven 30 wheat worth 30 silver dinars. He then bought it back from Reuven for 25 silver dinars. And now Reuven is going to have to pay back Shimon for the original layout of 30 of wheat worth 30 silver dinars. Now he isle chamra lilove, if Reuven has wine, or I imagine wheat, but basically not money, not cash, the yoivle b'shloshim dinar, that if Reuven can pay back Shimon with wine that's worth 30 dinars, well then it's no problem. We don't have to be concerned about ribis, right? Meaning, the problem would be if Shimon gave Reuven 25 silver dinars and Reuven's paying back Shimon 30 silver dinars. Then that looks like ribis. But if Shimon gives Reuven 25 silver dinars and Shimon gives Reuven 25 silver dinars and Reuven is paying back the original loan of 30 silver dinars with wine, so Reuven's receiving 25 silver dinars but paying back Shimon with wine. So then it doesn't. Then it's not ha'aramas ribis. It doesn't look like ribis evasion. The ilo, but if Reuven doesn't have wine and instead he's going to be paying back Shimon with cash, certainly then Reuven's going to be paying back Shimon with cash for 30 silver dinars. Well, then mechzek ribis. Then it looks like interest because Reuven is receiving 25 silver dinars and paying back 30 silver dinars. Okay. Kind of a funny reading, very creative, innovative reading of our Mishnah, but Rava is going to ask all sorts of technical questions that are very technical. Rava kind of, look, I mean, this whole explanation of Abaye is like very, very creative. So Rava has all sorts of Abaye's explanation of our Mishnah does not resemble our Mishnah whatsoever. So Rava asks like a bunch of questions on that. Rava says to Abaye, look, I don't understand. Yachi, if your explanation is what's going on, Tein li chitai, when in our Mishnah, which says, the way that we understood it, which is Reuven says to Shimon, because the way that we understood it, Reuven had given Shimon money for wheat, and then the price of wheat went up. Reuven had said to Shimon, hey, give me my wheat. But here, it's demei chitai mi boile, give me the value of my wheat. And I don't even know who's talking to who at this point. I don't even know who's talking to who. Demei chita, is it talking about Reuven saying that I want the value of the wheat, or maybe Shimon is saying, give me back the value of my wheat that I lent you? Maybe that's the point. Tani demei chitai. Okay, fine. So say, give me the value of my wheat. All right. Shani rotze lemochran. Okay, so in our Mishnah we said that Reuven had said to Shimon, hey Shimon, I want the wheat because I want to sell them in order to buy wine. Shemechartim l'cha mi ba'ilei. Well, it should be that I sold you. Right? Give me the wheat, the value of the wheat that I sold to you. Who sold? I don't know. Who sold what? Reuven, I guess, sold to Shimon the wheat, right? He sold, right, the 24 dinars. Is that what it's talking about? I guess, right? Because the whole point was that Ruvain, in our Mishnah, the way we understood it was that Ruvain said that I want to sell it. Oh yeah, but I guess in this case, Ruvain actually sold it to Shimon for 24 silver dinars. 24 selas. Okay. So Tani Shemachaitim Lecha. Okay, so say that I sold you. All right. Harichi techa asuyus olai b'shloshim dinarin. Now, in our Mishnah, we had said, well, Reuven had initially given Shimon 25 dinars for wheat, and then when Reuven comes to collect it, Shimon says, oh wow, your wheat is now worth 30 dinars. But meikar nami hachi ukimna ilave. But in the way that Abaye explains it, it's not that it suddenly became 30, it was always 30 all along. So Achikama, this is what it's saying. Kama, this is what he's saying. Bidmei chitecha she'asisa olai b'shloshim dinar. Fine. So this is what it's saying. Again, this is what it's saying. Bidmei chitecha as the value of your wheat she'asisa olai b'shloshim dinar that you gave me for 30 dinars. Okay. Now here's the kind of final question, which we then use to throw out Abaye. Etzli boyen yayin v'yayin ein lo v'abedina zav akor v'chein ashar katoni. So again, so what is it saying? So arei lecha etzli boyen yayin. Okay, so these I guess 30 dinars in the way that we wanted to understand it, we want to say, well, these 30 dinars would be considered, right, a debt of wine. Behind it doesn't have wine. But it says that the value of it was the market rate at the time was 25 silver cores and not 30 or something. What does Rashi say? And if it's like you were saying, Abai, bedinar zav hayashar shloshim. That in Abaye's example, when Shimon had bought it back from Reuven for 25 dinars, really it was valued at 30, and he was kind of like paying at a discount. But the thing is, in our Mishnah, it's talking about where it was valued at 25, not 30. Okay. So Rava kind of pokes at Abaye's answer in all sorts of ways, and then Elo Amar Rava. Okay, so rather Rava kind of gives his own answer. Right, Abaye had given a very, very creative answer. Now Rava gives an answer which I think is the answer that, like, I kind of wanted to give from the beginning, right? It's very close to Rabba's answer, just Rabba had brought a proof from a brisa that didn't distinguish between if Shimon had the wheat or not. Now Rava is going to bring a raya from a brisa of Rabbi Oshaya that kind of gives us exactly, I think, what we're looking for to explain our Mishnah. Chaver, I think we are now 40 minutes into the daf, and we are finally getting up to today's daf. We haven't even started today's daf yet. Elo Omar Rave. So rather, says Rave, Ki shchivna, when I die, Reb Oshai nafak levasi, Reb Oshai is going to come and greet me. Dimatratzna masnisin kavase, because I explained Mishnayos like him. Says Rashi, if I understand Rashi correctly, top Rashi on Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, Dimatratzna masnisin kavase, shani rogil litaritz Mishnayos shesosam Rebbe kibraisha shesosam hu. Extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. So as I had pointed out earlier, Reb Chia and Reb Oshaya collected brises into the Tosefta. And those are, I think, considered like the most kind of like reliable Tosefta brises. So now Rava says that he often, when there's like a Mishnah, and Rebbe of course is the editor of the Mishnah, when there's a Mishnah that needs explanation, Rava says that he often explains them based on Reb Oshaya's brises. And therefore, says Rava, when I die and I go up to Shamayim, Reb Oshaya is going to come and greet me because he's going to be such a huge fan of mine and so appreciative of me for explaining Mishnayos like the brises that he accumulated, I guess, collected or compiled. So again, Elomai Rava Kishchivna, when I die, Reb Oshaya nafik levasi, Reb Oshaya is going to come to greet me. Dimatratzna masnisin kavase, because I explained Mishnayos like his brises. And now Rav is going to proceed to explain this Mishnah like Rabbi Shai's brisa, like a brisa of Rabbi Shai. The Tanya Rabbi Shai taught, Reuven had lent 100 dinars to Shimon. Okay, so Shimon owes Reuven 100 dinars. And Reuven goes to Shimon's granary to collect his 100 manas. His 100 dinars. Well, a dinar and a zuz, I think, is the same thing. And Reuven says to Shimon, hey, can you give me 100, you owe me 100 dinars, can you pay me back? Because I want to buy wheat with those 100 dinars. And Shimon says, you know what? I have wheat. And I can give you, I can supply you with wheat. Now, unlike the brisa that we quoted at the beginning of the daf, where even though Shimon has the wheat, it's going to be a problem nonetheless, since he's only converting his 100 dinar debt into wheat. Even if Shimon has the wheat, it's going to be a problem. However, this brisa says no, if Shimon has it, well then it will be okay. If Shimon has it, well then it's fine. And this relates to kind of the whole thing of Yotza Ashar. That if Reuven gives Shimon money, if he actually gives him money, in this case he's just converting debt, but if Reuven actually, the whole concept of Yotza Ashar is that if Reuven actually gives Shimon money now for wheat that is going to get in the future, it's okay if the market rate is what he's giving him, since now that he has hard cash, he can actually go and procure, that wheat or whatever. So here also, in this case, Reuven isn't giving him money. He already gave him 100 dinars initially. Shimon is converting that 100 dinar debt into wheat. But as long as we haven't said this yet, but we're going to say it, and I think it makes sense to explain it now. I think it'll just help us right now. That since Shimon has this wheat, it's fine, because that's the whole point of Shara Yotze, is as long as Shimon would be able to fill the order now, whether it's because Reuven gave him money, or whether it's even if he's converting debt, but Shimon has, he's converting 100 dinar debt into wheat, but if Shimon has the wheat, so he can fill the order right now. So that's okay. So again, so let's start from the beginning. So Reuven had lent 100 dinars to Shimon and he goes to Shimon's granary. And he says to Shimon, and he says to Shimon, look, give me, pay me back 100 dinars. Because I want to buy wheat. And Shimon says to Reuven, Chitin yeshli shani nosein lecha. 1 second, I'm just checking something quickly. Okay, great. And Shimon says, Chitin yeshli shani nosein lecha. Look, I have wheat. I'll supply you with the wheat. Say vason olai kishar shel achshav. I'll agree to provide you with your wheat based on the current market rate. Whatever 100 dinars can buy you of wheat. Now, higiyazman chitin limkor, and now comes the time, the peak season for wheat, when it's the highest price. So now, so let's say now the wheat is worth, it's at the peak season, the wheat is now worth 150 dinars, let's say. So Omar Lo, Reuven says to Shimon, hey, Shimon, you haven't given me my wheat yet, I want it now. Tein li chitin, give me my wheat, because I'm going to want to sell them now for 150 dinars and buy wine with them. Omar Lo, you know what Shimon of course says to Reuven? How about this? I have wine. Well, okay, how about this? Instead of me giving you the wheat and you'll sell them and buy wine, I'll provide you with 150 dinars worth of wine. Now, what's also noteworthy is you see what just happened there. He basically converted the wheat to money, right? And then he's using that money is basically, meaning, as we know, Shimon would be able to give the wheat back to Reuven. The question is, what about giving money? Would Shimon be able to give money back to Reuven? Because Reuven gave him 100 dinars. So we said that Shimon would be able to now give back the wheat to Reuven, which is worth 150 dinars. What about, would he be able to give Reuven 150 dinars? What about the fact that Reuven gave him 100 and he's getting back 150? So that's going to come up later. But if you notice what just happened, essentially, Shimon just converted the wheat to money, 150 dinars, and he says, I'll provide you now 150 dinars of wine. Okay, so let's just look whatever the market rate is for whatever amount of wine 150 dinars can buy, and I'll provide that. He gives mine yain limkor. Now becomes peak wine season, and again the price of wine goes up. So let's say the amount of wine that he initially had for 150 is now worth 200. And Reuven says to Shimon, okay, look, I want my wine. It's now worth 200 dinars. I want my wine. So that I could sell it and buy 200 dinars worth of oil on my low. And Shimon says, you know what? Shemen yeshli shani nosein l'cha. I have oil, but I'll just provide you with 200 dinars worth of oil. I'll provide you with 200 dinars worth of oil based on whatever 200 dinars, however much oil 200 dinars can get you based on the current market value. Kulam, in all of these cases, whether with the wheat, with the wine, with the oil, im yesh lo mutter, as I said earlier, if Shimon has the wheat, has the wine, has the oil, at the time that he says, hey, I'll provide it for you, so mutter. So then it's no problem. Then that's okay. Then that is okay. As I said earlier, right? Because the whole point around here is, as long as Shimon would be able to fill that order that he's promising, as long as he could fill it now, then it's acceptable, right? And right, so as we said, like even if Shimon doesn't have the product, but Reuven's giving him cash and he could then go and buy it for the market rate, that would be okay. So also here, when Reuven isn't giving Shimon cash, they're just converting an existing debt. But as long as he has the product that he's promising, that would be acceptable. But ein lo, if he doesn't have it, osir. If Shimon doesn't have it, so then it would be a problem, because Reuven isn't giving him anything. So he's not getting cash right now that he can go and buy for the market rate. He's not giving anything. He's just converting an existing debt. And if Shimon doesn't have it, then he doesn't have anything, and therefore it's going to be a problem. Also, Rashi says you could leave out those 4 words. We have enough on our plate. Let's just leave them out. So basically, Rava explains the Mishnah based on Oshaya's Brisa the way that I kind of initially wanted to explain the Mishnah. We started with Rabba, then Abaye, finally Rava. We've been on a long journey so far. I think it's been 50 minutes already. And where we're at right now is to understand the Mishnah in the following way. Reuven gives 25 dinars to Shimon as a forward contract for wheat. Now, that is the market rate, right? That at the time, 25 dinars will buy you a core of wheat. That's the market rate. And therefore that's acceptable, because Shimon could theoretically take these 25 dinars now and go and buy a core of wheat with those 25 dinars. So therefore it's acceptable. Now, later on comes time for Reuven to collect his wheat. Wheat has gone up now to 30 dinars for a core. Reuven says, okay, I want my core of wheat back, which is completely acceptable. That's fine. Shimon says, how about this? Instead of me giving you a core of wheat, which is worth 30 dinars. Right, so Reuven says, I want the wheat so I could sell it and buy wine. Shimon says, look, I'll provide you with the wine. So we're saying, look, if Shimon, now Reuven isn't giving Shimon any money right now. He's just converting an existing debt from wheat to wine. So we're saying, look, if Shimon has wine right now, so we said it's completely fine, just like we said in this price with Rabbi Shai. If he doesn't have wine, well then it's going to be a problem because he's not getting any money that he can now go buy wine with, and he doesn't have wine, so therefore it's going to be a problem. That is how Rava explains our Mishnah. Now it says Rava, Amarava Shmamina Midabashai Tlos. So now it says Rava that we learn from Rabbi Shai three things. Shmamina Timamidin Milve Al Gabe Peris Vlaminon Diloki Isaro Habaliodohu Vishmamina Hudi Yeshlo. That so again, Shmamina, we learn that the Mamidin Milve Al Gabe Peris, that we can convert a loan onto fruits, right? Just like, we learned in Rabbi Shai's case, the scenario was that Reuven had lent 100 dinars to Shimon, so there was a loan, and then Shimon says, hey, I'll provide you with wheat, so we can convert a loan onto fruits. Vilo Aminan Tuloki Isara Baliadohu. We don't say, well, it's going to be a problem because Shimon's not actually receiving any cash right now. But Vishma Amina Duhu Sheyesho, that's so long as Shimon has the fruits that he's promising. Because if not, then he's in trouble. Then it won't work. Vishma Amina, and finally, thirdly, we learn Isa Lidribyane Dam Ribyane Malihain Malidmain, as I pointed out earlier, that we hold like Ribyane, who says, what's the difference of them or their money? Meaning, when we say that if Reuven lent Shimon 100 dinars, and when he comes to collect it, he says, hey, I want 100 dinars so I could buy wheat. And Shimon says, hey, I'll provide you with the wheat. And then the wheat goes up to 150 dinars. So we know that Shimon would be able to, give Reuven the wheat at its current rate. So Reuven gave Shimon 100 dinars, and ultimately he's getting 150 dinars worth of wheat back. We know that that's okay, so long as Shimon had the wheat at the time that it was converted, that the debt was converted to wheat. But Rabbi Yanai says that even Shimon would even be able to give back Reuven money at that time, right? Meaning if Reuven lent Shimon 100 dinars, and then when he came to collect it, he says, hey, I want my 100 dinars so I can buy wheat. And Shimon says, hey, I'll provide you with the wheat. Then the wheat goes up to 150. Shimon would even be able to just give Reuven 150 dinars right now, even though you might say, wait, but Reuven's giving 100 dinars and getting back 150 dinars. Isn't that ribbis? We say, well, if Shimon can give Reuven wheat that's valued at 150, he would also be able to just give him at that point money, right? Cash of 150. That would be acceptable as well. How do we know that? We know that because, as I pointed out, that when Reuven says to Shimon, hey, I want the wheat so that I could buy wine, and Shimon says, well, I'll just give you 150 dinars worth of wine. So we see that he basically converted the wheat into its monetary value, 150 dinars, and he's saying, we'll use this to apply that to buy 150 dinars worth of wine. So we see that essentially what's the difference if Shimon is giving Reuven at that point, the wheat or the wine, or if he's giving him its equivalent in actual money. Ditmar Rav Omar Osen Amona bePeris Vein Osen Amona beDomim. The Rav says, look, when we talk about forward contracts, and that Reuven can give Shimon, let's say, right, 25 dinars for wheat, and we say that as long as that's the market rate, it's acceptable. So then in the future, when the wheat comes in, if it's worth 30 dinars, we say it's okay. Rav says it would only be okay for Shimon to give Reuven the actual wheat that's valued at 30 dinars. He can't give him those 30 dinars, because then that would be ribbis, because he's, Reuven's giving 25 and getting back 30. It would have to be the fruits themselves. But Rabbi Yanai, however, says, Maliein umali dmein. What is the difference if Shimon gives, the wheat, or if he just gives 30 dinars, makes no difference. It's the same value. Meisvei, we have a kasha on Rav, right? Because Rav said that he could only give the fruits, but not the value. that we said, but not the actual money. V'chulam im yesh lo mutter. But we said that by all of those scenarios, so long as Shimon has, whether it's the wheat, whether it's the wine, whether it's the oil, as long as Shimon has it, it's mutter. But what about the fact that we're converting it into money to get that value? So Rav Huna Amarav v'Shem Moshach. So Rav Huna Amarav says, well, it's talking about where each step of the way, when Shimon says, you know what, I'll provide you with wheat. So Reuven then made a kinyan meshicha on the wheat. So it was actually Reuven, and it definitely belongs to Reuven, and any increased value is Reuven's, and therefore it's completely allowed. That's why it was allowed to be converted onto wheat, onto money to then, buy wine or oil. But if we're talking about where Reuven did a kinyan meshicha, do we need to teach that? Obviously, if he does a kinyan meshicha, it's his, and any increased value is his. Rather, it's talking about where Shimon had designated a corner for Reuven's wheat, and that would be, I guess, enough to make it Reuven's, and that's the chiddush. Okay. Ushmuel Amar Hamani Rabbi Yehuda hi. Whereas Shmuel says that this is Rabbi Yehuda the Amar tzad echad beribis mutter. The Rabbi Yehuda says that tzad echad beribis is mutter. Wow. So Rabbi Yehuda says that when it comes to interest, if it's sort of a possibility of interest, a conditional interest, that if there's one eventuality, there would not be ribis, but if there was a different eventuality, there would be ribis. Well, then even if the eventuality that would be ribis happens, it's not an issue of ribis. What does that mean in practical terms? It means, well, Reuven had given 100 dinars to Shimon, okay? Reuven had then said to Shimon, hey, I want my 100 dinars so that I could buy wheat. Shimon says, hey, I'll provide you with the wheat. Okay, so that is what they do. Now, the wheat went up to 150 dinars. Now, here's the thing. So we said that then Reuven says, I want my wheat so that I could buy wine. Shimon says, I'll provide you with wine. At that point, he converts the 150 dinars of wheat. He then converts to 150 dinars of, he makes a conversion into, cash value so that he could then apply that to purchase wine. And so we say that, well, according to Rav, that would be, Rav would say that that's a problem, right? Because you can only be paid with the fruits, not with actual money. The thing is that this would be an example of ribis mitzad echad, because it can go either way. Meaning, if Shimon were to give Reuven the money, the wheat, well, then it would be no problem at all. Only if he were to give him the money would we say, wait, hold on, Reuven gave you 100, you're giving him 150. So since, depending on what happens, if Shimon gives the wheat, it's no problem. If he gives the money, it is a problem. So that would be ribis mitzad echad. It would be a possible ribis. If he gives him the wheat, it's no ribis at all. If he gives him the money, then it is ribis. So that's ribis mitzad echad. And Rabbi Yehuda says ribis mitzad echad is not a problem, and therefore in that case, Shimon would be able to give to convert it to money in that case. So that is why it is okay. So again, right, Ushmul Amr Hamani, Rabbi Yehuda, that this brisa of Rabbi Shai is like Rabbi Yehuda, the Amr Tzad Echad Beribis Mutter, that sort of possible ribis, kind of conditional ribis, depending on what happens, kind of ribis is permitted. The Tana is learning a brisa. Harishahoyo Nosha B'Chaver Mana, that if Reuven lent 100 dinars to Shimon, V'asa lo sadeu mecher, and Shimon says, look, if I don't pay you back, you can have my field. Okay, Reuven lent 100 dinars to Shimon. Shimon says, if I don't pay you back, you can have my field. You can have my field. If I don't pay you back, you can have my field. So now the question is, who can eat from the field in the interim? So bisman she'amocher ochel peris mutter. So if Shimon eats from the field in the interim, so then there's no problems of interest. But lokeach ochel peris aser. But if Reuven were to eat from the field, it would be a problem. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Afiz Mancha Lekech Ochel Peres Mutter. Rabbi Yehuda says no, even if Reuven eats the fruits, it would be okay. Meaning, what's happening here? Reuven lent 100 dinars to Shimon. Shimon says, okay, I have to pay you back 100 dinars. If I don't pay you back 100 dinars, you can have my field. If in the meantime, Reuven, who loaned the money, and if he doesn't get paid back, he'll get the field. If Reuven's eating from the fruits, well then in the event, if, now again, sort of condition, if the outcome is that Shimon does end up paying back Reuven the 100 dinars, well then if Reuven was eating the fields all along, well then it's going to be a problem of ribbis, because Reuven he lent 100 dinars to Shimon, and he's getting in return, he's getting back his 100 dinars plus any fruits that he ate, which is going to be ribbis. So Tanakama says that would be a problem. Rabbi Yehuda says no, it's ribbis mitzad echad. It's conditional. It's not definite ribbis. It's only going to be ribbis if Shimon ends up paying back. What if Shimon doesn't pay him back? Well, then it'll be his field and it won't be ribbis. So therefore, even if he eats from the field, it's not actually going to be an issue. So again, Titania is willing to Brisa. If Reuven had lent Shimon 100 dinars, and Shimon said, if I don't pay you back, you can have my field. So if Shimon's eating the field from the fruits throughout, okay, there's no issue of ribbis, but mutter, that's fine. Also, but if Reuven is eating the fruits throughout, it's a problem, because if Shimon ends up not paying back, then if Shimon ends up paying him back, so then he will receive, the 100 dinars that he lent plus whatever fruits he ate, and that would be ribbis. So Rabbi Shimon says that even if Reuven is eating from the fruits, it's fine, it's not a problem of Isser, because, or at least we're going to see, it's two ways to understand it, but let's assume for now it's because of ribbis mitzad echad, because it's conditional ribbis, that if Shimon doesn't pay him back, well then it'll be his field and there won't be any issues of ribbis at all. So since that's a possibility, there's no issues of ribbis here. Omar, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, Maisa Baitus ben Zunin, there was a story with Baitus ben Zunin, She'oso Sadeu, Mecher, that he made his field, but he was Shimon in this case, he made his field, conditional on a loan, that if he doesn't pay it back, the field will go to the lender, to the loaner. Alpi Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was on board. And that was a scenario of where the loaner was eating from the fruits in the interim. Amrulo, they said, Misham Raya, you're really going to bring a proof from there. Mocher ochel peres. No, it was Baitus ben Zunin who was eating the fruits in the interim, and therefore it was not an issue of interest. Velo lokeach, it wasn't the loaner who was eating those fruits. Ma benayu, what's the nafkamina between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda? So Abai wants to explain it like kind of the sort of natural flow of the Gemara, which is that what was happening in that Brisa was that the Tanakama says Reuven cannot eat from the field because we're concerned about if Shimon pays him back, it'll be ribbis. And Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned because it's only ribbis mitzad echad, and that's not an issue of ribbis. Rava Omar ribbis amanas lachzir kebenai, whereas Rava says the concern here, the machlokes between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, is about ribbis amanas lachzir. What if Reuven was gonna pay back Shimon? If Shimon end up paying back Reuven is 100 zuz, and now Reuven's receiving is 100, well, zuz and dinar are the same thing. Reuven is receiving his 100 dinar in return, plus any fruits that he ate. Well, he would have to pay back Shimon for those fruits, according to Rava. And that's according to Rava, that's a machlokas. Tanakama says even though Reuven would have to pay him back, it's still a problem. Rabbi Yehuda says no, since Reuven's going to pay him back, it's not a problem. Okay, this next few lines is like a little bit funny, not super hard, but a little bit funny. Amar Rava says, Rava, Hashtad Amar Rabbi Yana. Now that Rabbi Yana says, Maliheinu Malidmein Amrinon, that we say that if Reuven, let's say in the case of Oshaya, Reuven had lent 100 zuz to, or dinars, whatever, to Shimon. He goes to get paid back. Shimon says, he says that you want wheat. Shimon says, I'll provide you wheat. And then the value of wheat goes up to 150. And then he says, I want to buy wine. And he says, well, I'll provide wine. And right? So Rabbi Yanai had said, look, Shimon can either repay with the wheat or he can pay with the money. It makes no difference, right? Right? Rabbi Yanai had said it makes no difference if Shimon repays with the fruits, with the wheat, or with the money itself. So mali tmein mali hein nami aminan. So it's kind of a funny thing. Basically, what it means is kind of a separate kind of case, which is that basically it's not a difficult case. Basically, the case of a forward contract, right? Which is that Ruvain. What does it say? Aminun ufoskin al shai shabashuk. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That meaning, Ruvain can give Shimon 25 zuz for fruits, if there is for a core of wheat, let's say, as long as that's the market rate. And we say it makes no difference if Shimon has the fruits or if he doesn't have the fruits but he could buy it. Meaning, so it doesn't matter if he has the actual fruits to provide or if he only has the money that Reuven gave him, which he can then go and buy for the market rate. Either way is fine. So whatever. So initially we say Malihain, whatever. It just adds to the confusion of his daf. Let's start again. Amar says, Rav Ashta Amar Rabbi Yanai. I don't want to get stuck on this. Malihain Mali Dmein. Now that Rabbi Yanai says it makes no difference if Shimon returns the fruits or if he returns the money. Amrinan, we say. So then, in this case, it's the opposite. Dmein in this case is the fruits, and Hain is the money, whatever. So Mali Dmein, it makes no difference if there's the value of the money that Reuven gave Shimon, i.e. the fruits. So if Reuven gives Shimon 25 dinars for a core of wheat, it doesn't matter if Shimon actually has the wheat, or if he just takes the money that he was given and buys, and he can buy a core of wheat and fill it that way. Nami Aminon, we say that's fine. Ufoskin al shai shebashuk v'afagav v'afapisha einlo, and meaning we can go based on the market rate, even though Shimon doesn't actually have the wheat at the time. Fine. Eisir of Papa Rav Huna ben Rav Yeshua l'Rava. Papa and Rav Huna ben Rav Yeshua ask a kasha and Rava. Kulam im yeshlo mutter in ein lo aser. But we had said by Rabbi Shai's brisa, we had said that in all of these scenarios, if Shimon has it, then it's mutter. But if he doesn't have it, then it's also then it's a problem. So yeah, but the difference over there is that there we're talking about a loan, whereas over here we're talking about buying. Meaning, we're saying if Reuven goes to Shimon and says, "I want to buy wheat from you," right, and he gives him 25 dinars for a core of wheat. So there we say, look, if Shimon has it, great. If he doesn't have it, but he can buy it at the market rate, that's also fine, as long as he's buying it. When it comes to the case of Rabbi Shai, that was talking about a loan. Reuven had loaned 100 dinars to Shimon, and then you were converting it onto, wheat or wine or whatever. So in that case, yeah, Shimon would have to have it. It wouldn't be enough to just be able to get it from somebody else because he doesn't have cash right now to get it from somebody else. Fine. Rabba Rav Yosef Dami Tarvayu, my taima amru rabbanon poskin al shar shebashuk v'afal pisha ein lo de amr le shkila tivusech v'shaja achizrei my ahanisli ihavu li zuzei biyodi hav mizabnina behinu v'shili bizola amr le abayle Rav Yosef el me'ata mutter lilvos so besor mishum dematzi amr le shkila tivusech v'shaja achizrei to amr le chitai dekadche ba'achlavoy amr le osam avo chazabinei amr le adabar abel rava v'ha by the Mesa of Zuzay the Safsira Amalei the Kayoiv le Nami Ravashi Amar Zuzay the Inche Inu Avde le Safsiruse. Wow. Okay. Let's do it. I don't know. At least start by doing it outside. Rabbi and Rav Yosef explain why it works for why Shara Yotze works, right? We're saying that Reuven can give Shimon 25 dinars for a core of wheat, even though Shimon doesn't have it right now, as long as it's the market rate, because he can go and buy it now at that rate, and we don't say it's an issue of, and we don't stop it and say, wait, it's going to be an issue of interest. How come? So let's actually read it inside. So Rabbi Rav Yosef, say Rabbi Rav Yosef, my time o Amar Rabban. How come the Rabbi said poskin al shaysh bashuk v'alfapisha ein lo? How can we say that there's no issue of interest, that it's acceptable for Reuven to give 25 dinars to Shimon for a core of wheat, even though Shimon doesn't have it, as long as 25 dinars for a core of wheat is the market rate? De Amar le, because if we say that it's a problem of ribis, you know what Reuven's going to say? Shkila tivusech v'shadja achizre. Take any benefit that you think that you're giving me, that, I gave you 25 and you're giving me a value of 30. Get lost. Maya, honestly, what are you benefiting me now? Guess what? If I wouldn't have given you the 25 zuz and instead I would have kept it for myself, I could have myself gone, one town over to Hine or to Shili and bought wheat at the market rate of 25 dinars for a core, and I could have also kept it for 6 months and it would have been the same 30 dinars. Right? Meaning the reason to kind of say it's a problem is to say, well, Reuven gave Shimon 25 dinars and now he's getting a value of 30 dinars because the value of wheat went up. And therefore it's not allowed. Reuven can't get his wheat valued at 30 dinars. Reuven says, come on, that's ridiculous. Just like Shimon, just like the value of wheat went up when Shimon's delivering it, I could have also just gone that very day to Hini and Shili and dropped 25 dinars on a core of wheat and taken it home and waited 6 months and it would have been the same 30 dinars. So you're not really doing anything special there. Just give me my wheat. Amalei Abai Rav Yosef, but then Abai says to Rav Yosef, we've seen the concept before of sa'a b'sa'a. This daf is jam-packed with stuff. We've seen the concept of sa'a b'sa'a, right? Reuven is not allowed to lend Shimon a sa'a of wheat and say, Shimon, pay me back later a sa'a of wheat, right? He can't loan Shimon a sa'a of wheat and say, pay me back a sa'a of wheat, because if the value of a sa'a of wheat increases, then we have to be concerned about ribis. But based on this logic, then sa'a b'sa'a shouldn't be an issue, because Reuven could just say to Shimon, meaning, what's the deal with sa'a b'sa'a? We say it's not allowed. Because if Reuven gives Shimon a sa'a of wheat, well then, when Shimon comes to pay back, we'll say, wait a second, he's paying you back more than you gave him. But shouldn't Reuven just be able to say, get lost? If I didn't give you this sa'a of wheat and I would have kept it in my storage house, what, would it have gotten ruined? No, it wouldn't. It would have been worth that same increased value if I wouldn't have given it to you. So leave me alone, give it to me. Yet we say that you're not allowed to do that. Right, so Abai Rav Yosef says, Abai to Rav Yosef, Elame'ato. So Abai asks Rav Yosef, he pushes him on this, well, I could have done it myself business. Elame'ato mutar luvo sa'a b'sa'a. Based on that logic, it should be permitted for Reuven to loan to Shimon a sa'a of wheat and say, pay me back a sa'a of wheat. Because when it comes payment time, and we say, wait, but the value of a sa'a went up, we say, who cares the value of the sa'a went up? Take your benefits and throw them to the thorns. What Reuben's going to say, what? And if I would have kept my sa'a in my storage house, what, would it have gotten ruined? No, it wouldn't. And it would have been the same increased value as it is now that you have it. And yet we don't say that. So Amalei Rav Yosef responds, yeah, but there's a difference between sa'a b'sa'a, which is a loan, and buying wheat with a down payment, with like a forward payment. Hasam, there it's a loan, and therefore we have to be concerned about interest by a loan. Here he's giving him money to buy wheat. So it's different. But wait, what about the fact that, what do you mean? It wouldn't be that Reuben, it's not that Reuben gets no value from having Shimon take care of it for him and that he doesn't go buy it himself. If he went to buy it himself, he would have to pay a broker's fee to, when he gets to, Hini and Shili, he would have to pay a broker's fee. So, so Rav responds, well, what do you think? Shimon's not charging him, the amount that he's going to have to pay the broker? Of course, Reuben's paying the broker fee anyways. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi Zuzay de Inche Inu Avdile Sapsiruse, whereas Rav Ashi says, I wouldn't worry about the broker's fee. If Ruvain would go to Hini and Chile and show up, I'm sure that there would be plenty of merchants who would be willing to sell directly to Ruvain, for cash, and I wouldn't have to worry about the broker's fee. Rav Yosef Dami Tavayu, Rabbi and Rav Yosef say, Ayman de Yoiv Zuzay Atar Charifo Tzorich Lischazuya Leveidore. If a person buys, wheat at the early bird special, right? He pays for wheat before there has been an established market value, and already then he's buying wheat. So Ayman de Yoiv Zuzay Atar Charifo. If Reuven is, buying from Shimon wheat at the early bird rate, Reuven needs to show up at Shimon's granary. How come? Well, if it's because that'll make a kinyan. Showing up at Shimon's granary doesn't make a kinyan. If we're concerned about mishapara, right? That if Reuven is giving the money, well, then Shimon has to fill the order. Otherwise, it's the issue of mishapara that we learned about in Perek Azov. Yeah, but even if Reuven doesn't show up at the granary, there's still the concept of mishapara. So so really it is about, we are talking about mishapara. The thing is, when it comes to the early bird special, somebody who pays for the early bird special, I guess he would tend to do that in a few different places. He would put down money in a few places for the early bird special. And therefore, if Reuven then shows up at the granary and shows Shimon that he means business, so then Shimon's going to say, okay, he really means business, I better fulfill his order. But if Reuven doesn't show up, Shimon's going to say to Reuven, Amina dashkachas peri deshapir mididi. I figured, you know what? Maybe you found somebody else who had an early bird special that was better than mine, and you went with his. I didn't realize that you actually were, still wanted it. V'shakalt, and you took from somebody else, and therefore Reuven needs to show up at the granary so that, right, to show to Shimon, no, he really does plan on buying this stuff. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi says, look, now that we're saying if it's all about just making it clear to Shimon that he intends to collect the wheat, so then even if Reuven saw Shimon in the market and just kind of made clear to him, hey, by the way, we're still on, that would be enough as well. Chevre. Wow, we're going to stop here only because the Gemara tomorrow starts with something incredibly awesome, and we're now at the end of, I don't even know how long we're at the end of, but probably very long. It's probably one of the longest Babylon Talmud episodes. Maybe one of the recent ones was longer, I don't know, but we're going to stop here. We'll pick up from here tomorrow. Oh my God, this daf was absolutely packed with stuff. Importantly, we learned about this concept we learned about a few concepts, but the concept of Shara Yotze and how that works based on the market rate, that Shimon can go and buy it at that market rate, and how that ties into, well, what if he is, not actually receiving anything, but converting an existing debt? Well, then he would actually have to have it, right? Because it's about being able to fulfill to be able to fill the order. Oh my gosh, we talked about, the Machlokas Rav and Rabbi Yanai about is it only okay for Shimon to fill the order at the higher rate? Can he actually give him the cash? Would that be considered kind of avak ribis? What about, right, we learned about haramas ribis, things that are like ribis evasion. We learned about Bisa came up. So many things came up. But anyways, that was Daf Samach Gimel of Masechet BavaMetzia. Peace out.